community forum put on by Plainfield Friends Church. If you don't have a community forum brochure, we have some on the table over here. We'll tell you what's coming up next. We have had the library with the history of Plainfield. The police department's been here. The Chamber of Commerce has been here. Today we're going to have a chat with Chief Brent Anderson of the Plainfield Fire Territory. Just want to mention next month is a little different. We're going to have the Hendricks County Symphony Brass Quintet. And the plans are to do that out on the grounds, but we're not absolutely sure about that yet. So that's something to look forward to. And then also on December 14th, there will be a Christmas concert. So you get to hear this pipe organ and sing some Christmas carols. Well, that takes care of my job. So I'd like to introduce Brent Anderson, and he can introduce his crew.
Well, thanks, Bill, and thanks to the Friends Church for having us out tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to come talk about the fire territory and what we're passionate about and what we do on a daily basis. There's only a few of you here, so we'll try to keep it short and be ready for any questions or you might have when we're done. But anyhow, as Bill said, I'm Brent Anderson. I'm the fire chief here in Plainfield. I've been here almost 20 years on the fire territory. However, I've only been the chief for the last 16 months or so. Last March, I became the interim chief right as COVID started. And then in June of last year, I was made chief. And like I said, I've been here 20 years. About half of that I spent in admin. So I was the assistant chief for 8 years before becoming the chief. And then I got 4 other chiefs that report directly to me. And I brought them with me tonight. Three of the 4, one of them can't be here, but Greg Williams is my admin chief. So on a daily basis, I'm responsible for the whole organization. But then the rest of my team really run the organization. So Chief Greg Williams, he's the admin chief. He takes care of our safety stuff, all of our personnel files, all the HR stuff, the IT, all the stuff that goes along with admin. That's what he does on a daily basis. And then I'm going to have these guys introduce themselves, and they can tell you what they do on a daily basis. And then when we get to questions and answers, if they got anything else, then we'll get there. But I'll tell you a little bit about the fire department after they introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I am Jeff Dixon. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations. And my job is to run the day-to-day operations of the fire trucks and ambulances going up and down the road. I'm also responsible for all of our training for all of our personnel throughout the fire territory. Well, I've been here, so me and the fire chief, we got hired together, so I've been here about 20 years. I just come in the office in January. I was a captain before that and a lieutenant for many years. I live just west of here, kind of out by the Clayton area. It's where I was born and raised and where I'm raising my kids now. So most of my fire service career as a full-time firefighter has been in the town of Plainfield.
My name is Wade Stevens. I'm the fire marshal here with the town. Basically, I'm responsible for the code enforcement, fire and explosion investigations, any of the new building projects that go on within the town. I help review all the plans, the civil sites, and make sure that everything is built and up to current code standards. If anything is not up to code standards, then I have to take enforcement action to get things corrected. I started with the Plainfield Fire Territory in 2002. I came in the office in 2016, 2017, somewhere in that time frame. I've been in the fire service here, since 2002. I started as a volunteer in 1993, just west of here. And I currently live 1 mile outside of town.
Good evening. So my name's Doug Randall. I'm Division Chief of EMS. So that entails ensuring that all the medics on the ambulances are doing the things that they should be doing, right? Ensuring they have the supplies that they need and proper protocols are being followed and just overseeing that part of the process. So that's pretty much what I do on a daily basis. I come from St. Louis City. I've been in Plainfield for about 5 years now. And I came here as Division Chief of EMS. I have 20 years in the fire department prior to that. So I'm a very young 50 here with you tonight, enjoying the town of Plainfield. I've been living here the entire time, those 5 years as well. So, pleasure.
All right, thanks, man. So yeah, while they introduced themselves, I didn't do a very good job of introducing myself. So as I said, I've been here 20 years, but I grew up out at Cascade. Born and raised here in Henderson County. I've never known anything other than Henderson County. Never known anything other than Henderson County Fire Service. I knew at the age of 15 that this is what I wanted to do. So I started out as 15 as a cadet out of Clayton and fell in love with it. I fell in love with, a lot of people say they get in this job for helping people. And that is part of why we get into it. But I also found that I was never going to be a professional athlete, but I found that this is the closest you can be to having that team and that camaraderie and stuff as you do as any other sports team. You work in the fire station with the same crews, men and women, every third day. You form that bond just like you do in a sports team. So I think that's what really drew me to the fire service and has kept me so engaged in it. But a little bit about the fire territory. We're approaching 100 years. In 1923, the town didn't really have organized fire service. It was a large fire. This building had burnt about 10 years before that, and it was kind of disorganized, but it didn't do a lot of damage. In 1923, there was a fire downtown that destroyed several homes and several garages. At that time, they had to call for some trucks they tried getting a truck from Danville to come assist. Danville had a pretty good fire department at the time and much more modern equipment. But Danville said, we're not sure our truck's going to make it that far. So actually, the city of Indianapolis had to come out here and pretty much put that fire out after it destroyed a lot of stuff. And a few of the men here in town said, we've got to do something. So they went to the town board, and the fire department became organized in 1923 after that fire. So I'm the 11th fire chief in 100 years that the town's had. So our first fire chief was Edgar Myland. He became the chief in 1923 after that fire. He served for a few years, and then Carlos Red Swinford was the chief after that. You probably know the Swinford name, Swinford Park, right? So that was named after Red Swinford. He served as fire chief for like almost 40 years. He was fire chief for a long time. So as I say, I'm the 11th one in our history. When one person took up 40 of those 100 years, but we don't have a lot of turnover. We don't even really have a lot of turnover within the organization, especially at the chief level. So I say that's very strong leadership from the town and consistency, and that's why we're as successful as we are. So from 1923 until today, in the early 1970s, we started providing EMS service, transporting ambulance. Before that, the funeral homes did it. Fire department took that over in the early to mid 70s, and since then the EMS side has just exploded. We were called the fire department, but really we're an EMS organization that happens to respond to fires. So last year we did over 6,300 calls. This year we're well on pace to be over 7,000, which is, for the size of our town and the area we cover, is pretty busy. You talk about a Fishers or a community like that, a Noblesville or whatever, much larger population, many more firemen, men or women than we have, but we do more calls than they do. It's just the clientele and the warehouses and everything that goes along with that. Our guys and gals stay pretty busy every day. We average about 22 calls a day. And like I said, 70% of that's EMS. So we've got to be really good at EMS in what we do. However, we still have fires. That's low frequency, high risk. So you'll see us spend a lot of time or a lot of money, personnel on training for fires, because we still have to be good at that as well. But we just don't get that many of them to be proficient, so we have to spend more time practicing that. But where we're at today, we have about 81 full-time employees. So our men and women that work in the fire stations, they spend 24 hours on duty. So they reported this morning at 7 o'clock for duty, and they'll get off tomorrow morning at 7. And then they get 48 hours off, and it happens again. So today is Tuesday. They work Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Thursday, and it just rotates. Sunday, Wednesday, on a rotating schedule. Doesn't matter about holidays or weekends or any of that stuff. So we have 3 shifts, and that's the way they work. So, we have very nice facilities, very nice equipment, and those guys and gals live there with each other. So, we have 23 people, or 23 men or women a shift, and we try to have 20 of those working each day, spread out amongst our 3 fire stations. So, we have a headquarters facility, which is where we all work. There's 8 of us that work in admin. It's out on Moon Road, out in front of the prison. We moved in there in 18 or 17, late 18. We moved in there around Thanksgiving of 18 into that headquarters facility. Before that, we were over at the water tower on 267, on the south side of the water tower. That was our admin building before that. Now that currently houses our 911 center. So every call in Hendricks County for 911 or emergency services goes through that building. They dispatch all police and fire in Hendricks County. And then we had the fire station that was right on the other side of the water tower. That's now the police annex. The police department's taken that building over, and they use it for storage and training and have some offices in there. And we relocated that fire station, or those crews, just south of there, about a mile, on Edwards Drive, which is just north of Stoops Buick. There's a fire station there, and we opened that right at 2 years ago. And then our third we also have a fire station out on Moon Road. It replaced the one that was down here, where the current town hall government center is being built. We moved that crew moved out to Moon Road with us in 2018 as well. So they've been there. And we have a third fire station, which most people don't even know exists unless you get lost. It's over in the warehouse at 400 AirTech Parkway. And we built that building and moved in there in 2012. So facility-wise, we are blessed with very nice facilities, very nice equipment. And we're trying to keep up with the times the best we can. But as you know, the town's growing rapidly, almost too rapidly for us to even keep up. So we're constantly looking to see how we can keep up with the latest stuff, where we might need our next fire station at, and where we put resources to better serve the community. Right now, we're looking in the next 3 to 5 years, potentially building a new fire station south of I-70, south and east, to help cover that area there. The town has several thousand acres they acquired from the airport. They're going to develop some of that into nature preserve and stuff. And then there's also some warehouses and everything going down there. So we cover all of Guilford Township. So we cover all the town and all of Guilford Township. Guilford Township goes all the way down to the Hartley Crossing area. So we're responsible to cover any of those areas that makes up the territory, right? And we're called a territory because really we're our own taxing entity between the town and the township. Prior to 2009, the town, it was the town fire department, and they contracted with the township for fire and EMS. The township would pay a flat rate. They'd buy us some equipment and stuff for the town to cover their calls. We became the fire territory in 2009. What that did was, if you lived in the township, you may have paid less in taxes for fire protection than somebody did in town. 2009, we created the territory. Everybody that's covered by our response area pays the same fee for fire and EMS protection. So really, we're funded through those tax dollars, but it's very much like the school system or the library is the way that tax is. The tax we collect for fire protection can only be used for us. The town can't take that and use it for parks department or street department or someplace else. So it's earmarked fire protection, and we get that money. So it's really just a funding mechanism and a name thing. We're still governed by the town board. The town council is our governing agency. So even though it's a territory, we still operate underneath the town. So that makes sense to everybody a little bit, and where we're at today. Questions so far? Anything? Looks like you might have one on top of your mind. All right. I'm going to see. Well, I think it's something else to talk about. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Randall for a few minutes. He's going to talk about one of our latest purchases and just EMS. Like I said, EMS is a very large part of what we do. So he's got a lot of responsibility, and he can talk about the latest happenings in EMS.
All right, I'm back. Yay. So let's talk EMS. So when you hear EMS, you hear about medical problems, right? You hear about ambulances, and you may hear about paramedics and EMTs. So quickly, the difference between an EMT, which is an emergency medical technician, and a paramedic. They're not one and the same. The EMT only goes to school for about 6 months, and they can do basic things, CPR, putting people on oxygen, controlling bleeding, things like that. Paramedics were created for one main reason, and that was heart attacks. So they have these advanced life support monitors that we can read the rhythms just like you do in the hospital, and we can tell you with some certainty if there's a good chance you're having a heart attack. And we can treat that right on the scene. But we also do other advanced skills. So we can put tubes into your airways, we can give you medications through IVs, so many things we can do in the field to start the care that you get in definitive care, which is in the hospital. So that's the difference. So we call paramedics advanced life support and EMTs basic life support. We work well together. EMTs keep paramedics honest. Don't forget the basics. We do the advanced stuff, right? Right. All right. So what about the stuff that we do, right? So there's probably across the country 1% of your calls where you have very sick children, right? 1% out of 100, one call. We train on that, and it's good to train on that, right? Because we're going to get a lot of them. But here's the problem. When the call comes in, and there's a very sick kid, then could you imagine our anxiety when that call comes in? So we have a tool that we use to help us with our anxiety because it gives us some opportunity to make sure we're giving the right size medication, that we're giving the right type of equipment so that we can properly treat those kids in that very intense time. So that was an option we purchased, and they're comfortable with that option, right? So that's an important piece, that we can handle those calls. We may get one a year, but when we do get it, we're ready. And that anxiety level has been decreased because they have the right tools to get the job done. And speaking of tools, we also purchased something that helps us in general, and it makes what we do more effective, and that's called a Lucas device. What's a Lucas device? Well, it's that contraption that's up there. And what it basically does is compressions. If you've taken CPR and you had to do CPR for 2 minutes on a mannequin, when you got done, you're like, man, I think I might need CPR, right? I mean, if you were doing it right, that's probably what happened. But can you imagine? Our protocol says that this has to be done for 30 minutes before we pronounce the patient deceased, right? And there it takes about 10 of us on that run to rotate through every couple of minutes to do it properly. The longer you do it by yourself, the worse your CPR becomes. So we were able to purchase this device, and each one of there we have a total of 3 on each pumper, on each fire truck. So the fire trucks are mostly in town, and if something happens, they're pretty quick to respond, right? And so what it does is really as simple as 1, 2, 3. And this uses a simple plunger because you turn it on. Once you turn it on, you want to make sure it's in the right place, in the right location, and it's ready to do its thing. On a continuous basis, you can do it where it does 30 compressions, and then we breathe twice. So it just depends on the protocol for that particular patient. But this frees up a lot of manpower. This helps us in figuring out exactly what's wrong because the scene is not so chaotic. So it calms it down. And it's most effective and it's consistent. So if I'm doing CPR for a couple minutes, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I shouldn't have had that extra burger in the station tonight. I'm tired. But this hasn't had an extra burger in the station. This is good to go. As long as each battery's good for 45 minutes. So we in it. Here's something that's funny. we sometimes get to the hospital with this, right? And we get there and it's doing this thing, and then the person comes back, and then we keep it on them just in case they stop having a pulse again. We get to the hospital, the person loses a pulse. The doc says, hey, could you stay here for a few minutes? We want to use that. So we hang out for a few minutes, and they continue to use it, right? So it's a benefit all around. It benefits us because it helps save our folks' backs. It helps decrease the potential injuries. It continues CPR even when we move the patient, which before it stopped. And we know effective compressions has to be continuous. That's effective compression. So the chance of it saving more lives is pretty high. So we're excited, and we're always looking for things to do better. And what do we mean by doing better? Is it better for us or is it better for you? It's first better for you before it's better for us.
So yeah, we bought 3 of those. We put those in service in a couple of weeks. The guys and gals were raving over how much more effective they were and how they could do their job better and all that stuff. So it's really paid dividends. There's only 3 of those right now in the fire service in Hendricks County, and we happen to have all 3 of them. So pretty blessed to have, like I said, pretty blessed to have the nice equipment and stuff. The town very, very much supports us, and it makes our jobs easier whenever they can. So Chief Dixon's going to talk a little bit about operational things and how that works.
So the fire chief kind of talked about where our firehouses are at. All of our firehouses have a medic truck, so they have a paramedic ambulance, and we have a pumper, what Chief Randall referred to. It's a truck that carries water and hose. And almost all the time, those pumpers also have a paramedic. So if that paramedic ambulance is already on a run at a hospital, that fire truck shows up, it's got a paramedic. It has the exact same equipment that ambulance has on it. The only thing it can't do is actually put you in the ambulance and take you to the hospital. But the paramedic's there, and they can provide that same life-saving treatment. And so we get the question a lot, why do fire trucks follow ambulances to those EMS calls, right? It's a big truck, and there's 2 reasons. One is most EMS runs, he just kind of talked about the complexity of EMS. Most EMS runs take more than 2 people, right? And so the other side of that is, as busy as we are now, as soon as that fire truck marks in service, they're now available for another call. It might not just be another EMS call. It could be anything under the sun. We respond, if it doesn't involve a gun, right, a bad guy with a gun, the fire department usually goes and takes care of it. Our fire engines can go take care of all those emergencies. So the reason that they follow is, A, they're carrying equipment, we're getting people there, and then as soon as they're done there, they're available for the next response, which could literally be the next street over. If we send them in an SUV and the house across the street is on fire, like, well, we have to get our engine, right? It doesn't work out that well. We also have 1 ladder truck. It's kept the firehouse off 267. We only have 1 of those. And it typically goes on EMS runs only if that engine is busy in that firehouse. So if that engine is already assigned to an incident, then they'll go on an EMS run, but they go to fire alarms, they go to fires, and people trapped. They also do all of our technical rescue kind of stuff. The other question we get is, why do we send so many fire trucks to a fire? So, you know, if somebody calls and says there's smoke in my house, or they give any indication there may be a fire, right? Our goal is 21 firefighters. That's what we're trying to send. So every report of a fire we send, well, we have a shift commander to manage those 22 people per shift, and he responds to all of the big incidents and helps manage that. But we send 5 fire trucks. So that's 3 engines and 2 ladders. And we're doing that to keep our guys safe, and we have a number of tasks that we have to get done at the exact same time, right? When we pull up to a fire, there's 5 or 6 things we need to get done, but they all need to be done right now, right? And so that's the way we accomplish that, is by throwing a lot of guys and equipment at that. And then the other thing is why maybe do you get an Avon ambulance or an Avon fire truck to your house when you call 911 and not a Plainfield fire truck? Or vice versa, why is a Plainfield fire truck going to Avon? So in this county, we rely heavily on mutual aid. That means we help each other all the time. And I've heard it said 100 times, and I'm going to steal somebody else's line, but if we can get on your phone and get the closest Uber, why can't you get on your phone and get the closest fire truck or ambulance, right? If you're having an emergency, you probably don't care in that moment what my patch on my shirt says when I come walking in your door. You want me to show up and make the day better, right? And so we're going to send the closest resource. There are times that an Avon ambulance or fire truck may respond to your house, and yet we still have a fire truck and ambulance sitting in service on the other side of town, but they're just simply closer geographically. And so that's why you're going to see those coming here all the time. Every report of fire, we get some mutual aid that comes in and help, and we go help them just as often. Is there any questions?
All right, thanks, Chief Dixon. So I'm going to let Wade Stevens, Fire Marshal, talk a little bit about the building stuff that's going on. Obviously, the town's exploding. But before I do that, though, it takes about, next year's budget is going to be about $11 million is what it takes to operate the fire department each year. Sounds astronomical, but it's about $11.5 million, but almost $10 million of that's payroll. So personnel cost is everything. We really operate, keep the lights on, pay for fuel, all the supplies we need. We do that on about $1.5 million outside of payroll. Then we have a cumulative fund that pays for equipment stuff like that. A new fire truck, as they called it, a pumper, is about $600,000. A new ladder truck's over $1 million. So it takes a lot to get that equipment. We just ordered a new reserve ladder truck last week. That was about $1.2 million. But where we are with the economy and it's people struggling to have help and all that stuff, we aren't expecting delivery of that until next December. So 480 days is what they told us it's going to take to build that. And that's just as much as building a house. We have a committee that goes and they spec out everything they want on that truck. What kind of shelves they want in this compartment and how much water it's going to carry and how big of a pump it's going to have and what brand tires and the lighting package and everything. Fire trucks aren't like cars. You don't just go pick one off a car lot somewhere and say, that's the one I want. It's really custom made to the community and whatever fits their needs. So where I'm leading into that plays a lot into our buildings, right? When they build a warehouse, when we build schools in the community, when they do all that stuff, Wade is involved from the beginning. He's looking at plans, where are fire hydrant locations, the FDC on the building, which is where the fire department connection is, the access, right? Is there enough access for us to get in? They can't park cars at these apartments all the way around the building, right? Or we can't get our trucks in there. So he's looking at access and egress issues and stuff for our trucks. And I'll let him tell a little bit about what he does and how the town's exploded in growth.
Currently, right now in the town of Plainfield and Guilford Township, we have 1,080 Class 1 structures. So that would be industrial, commercial, stuff like big warehouses all the way down to like Taco Bell. Those are all considered Class 1 structures. And right now we have over 45 million square feet of industrial buildings under roof. I think when you include all the commercial buildings, we have closer to 59 million total between the two. Some of the facilities that we have here in the town have great big PIC systems and modular systems and sprinklers and mezzanines. Like the UPS building, they have enough conveyors in there that if you laid them out flat, they would stretch from Plainfield to Shelbyville. And then you got all the platforms. So there's a lot of safety features and everything that goes inside those. The Kohl's warehouse, inside their PIC module, they have over 50,000 sprinkler heads within that PIC module. The buildings that we inspect, we always get people that decide, hey, we're going to put a fence in later. You know, they don't tell us, and then we find it when we do go out and do our annual inspections, which we try to inspect every building on an annual basis. With COVID, that's not going to happen again this year, but we try really hard to hit every one of these buildings. And everybody's all the time continuously, like in the warehouses, they will build a building. I don't know what's going in there yet, but they will build a building. Currently up there off of Smith Road and Bradford, that's going to be another Amazon building going in there. So they'll build the building and then they'll come in and say, hey, this is what we're going to design inside of it. So it's like a multiple phased process, and then they change just about everything inside once they build it again. So, I mean, it's an everlasting, ongoing, never-ending project for all these buildings here in town. And sometimes it affects even how the streets are laid out and everything else. So I normally spend at least 8 hours every month just reviewing projects with all the other department heads within the town. That's on average of how much time we spend jointly, not aside to ourselves.
All right. Well, I don't have a whole lot else, but we would be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Or okay, good question. We really try not to replace stuff until it needs to be replaced, right? But we also plan for the future. So you're always looking at that, trying to figure out, okay, I might need one of these in 5 or 6 years. So you're budgeting for that. On average, about 10 years. We can get about 10 years out of a pumper, which is the fire truck. So difference between a pumper and a ladder truck, right? A ladder truck carries the ladder on top, and our ladder truck does not carry any water. It's really a big toolbox. As Chief Dixon said, it does our technical rescue, which is water rescue, confined space, ropes, carries all of our extrication equipment for vehicle extrications and stuff. So that's really just a big toolbox. A pumper, its job at a fire scene is to supply the water. They're the ones that go in and put the fire out, right? They're the ones that stretch the lines and spray the water. The ladder truck shows up, they ventilate, they have their saws, they've got their fans, they throw ground ladders, maybe try to make a rescue, get to the roof, all that stuff. So a pumper's first out on EMS calls as well. So it runs a lot of EMS. So 10 years to answer all those questions. We typically know on a vehicle rotation plan, we spend a lot of money maintaining our trucks every year. Like I said, we have a very nice fleet. We take good care of them, but it costs a lot to maintain them. Tires don't last a long time on them as much as they do a car because they're driven hard, right? I mean, you start it up, you drive it really hard for a short period of time, you drive it back to the fire station, you shut it off. You drive it hard, you shut it off. So, but 10 years on a pumper, we can probably get about 12 years or so frontline service out of a ladder truck. And ambulances, we're going through those about every 5 years. And an ambulance is $265,000. But our ambulance is on the road every day, all day, every day. We're probably putting 30 some thousand miles a year on our ambulances. COVID has really driven our ambulance calls up. I'd like to say it's all COVID, but it's not. I also just think it's a lot of people in the last year, a lot of stress, a lot of mental, emotional, a lot of overdose. But I think that's all contributed to society and the stress of COVID and all that stuff. So our guys and gals stay busy, but yeah, we have a vehicle rotation plan, so I can, for the most part, forecast when that's going to fall in my budget and make sure the money's there to buy it. Yep. Yep. And that's not all the time, right? There are some times that the ambulance will go by itself. It just depends on what the nature of the call is, where it's located, and that all comes through our 911 center, right? So when somebody calls 911, it's an emergency. In their eyes, that's an emergency, right? And it's not for the dispatch center for us to judge what's an emergency, what's not an emergency. But more than likely, they give the impression that it's the worst day of their life, right? So a dispatcher reacts to that and says, I want to send them enough help. So a lot of times you're going to get an ambulance and a fire truck. Sometimes if they call and say, well, my mother's been sick for 2 weeks, and I just really got to get her to the hospital. She might have a little issue going on, but it's not life threatening. I just need the ambulance to come get her. That's when you might see the ambulance show up by itself, because they've gave that dispatcher that information to make that call to say it's an. Yeah, and then they'll go as far as to ask, what's the weight of the patient, right? So if you're dealing with somebody that's heavier, we're not an ambulance. Two employees on an ambulance may not be able to handle that. So we send a fire truck, first of all, to provide the best level of care we can. Second of all, to make our people safe. If you're dealing with a cardiac arrest, prior to that, we would send multiple fire trucks because we have to have all that help and stuff. So a lot of it, sometimes it's just not needed, and we understand that, but we don't know that until we get there. And we're always going to err on the side of caution to send too much and not enough. To every emergency, you're going to see that. We don't want to be behind the 8 ball. If we start behind the 8 ball, we're probably not going to win that game. We want to start ahead all the time. So, anyhow. Yes, sir. Where at? Yep. So Washington Township Avon has their own fire department. The part of Plainfield that's Washington Township Avon. So So if you get up off of Township line and some of that, you might be town of Plainfield, Woodfield, Williamsburg in the Woods, up in that area. That sits in Washington Township, but it's town of Plainfield, right? Doesn't matter. We don't do jurisdictional boundaries anymore for fire and EMS protection. Whoever has the closest available unit is going to cover that call. So today, you might dial 911, and all these trucks are in service, and you might get one of our trucks because we're the closest. Well, tomorrow, that truck's out on a call, you're going to get Avon because they might be the next closest, or vice versa. It's really just, we don't, as Chief Dixon said, who cares about that badge? We want to get you the help that you need as fast as you can get it. We don't care where that comes from. We're not about egos or any of that stuff. So where that changes a little bit, right? If you start going west of here, they start turning into volunteer fire departments, and they operate on a lot less funds than we do, and it's volunteers, and there may or may not be somebody available, so we supplement them quite a bit. We take a lot of calls out there. They don't run an ALS service, which is advanced life support. They don't have paramedics, so we are their paramedic service. So you see a lot of our trucks going west. We're going to help them, right? And you're going to find that in almost every community. Big Brother, which is the bigger towns or cities or fire departments, are always going to help the little brother because they don't have the manpower or the people to handle a lot of those emergencies on their own. So, yep. Typically, a lot of that's partnerships, right? A lot of that is you would not know on the backside of the fire department other than where our paychecks come from and what shirts we wear, the way we operate. Would I say they work shifts? The same shift that works at Avon today is the same shift Plainfield is, and they work all the time. And they train together. We work together. But specifically for training, we don't have our own training facility. In the years past, we'll get acquired structures sometimes. Maybe they're going to put a development in, and they're going to tear this house down or whatever it is. We'll get access to that. The developer will say, hey, we'll give you 2 months to train there, whatever. So we use a lot of stuff like that. We go to Wayne Township. They have a state-of-the-art training facility. Brownsburg has one. Now Avon's building one. But also, now we're blessed. The state is going to put a regional training site here in Plainfield, IDHS. So the Department of Homeland Security is going to put a regional training site here in Plainfield. It's going to be over kind of between the boys' school or Heritage Trail Correctional Facility now and the Law Enforcement Academy. They've got some land back there that actually started moving dirt already, and they're going to put a regional training site there. The town is going to partner with them to provide some utilities and stuff in exchange for us to be able to train there. So it's a win-win for everybody. They're getting their site. We're getting a site here in town that we don't really have to pay for or maintain, right? It's just a partnership, and we'll have access to it. So stay tuned on that. So, yes.
Thank you, Chief Anderson. So the word accurate is kind of a misnomer for television shows. We're going to use the word Hollywooding, okay? Because the reality of what we do isn't always that exciting on every run. If we had that much excitement in an hour or in a day, then we were all just drop dead of heart attacks because it's too much. We have a lot of very simple things that happen. We take care of people who fall on the floor. We take care of people who just not feeling well. And then every once in a while we'll get one of those TV show type runs. So, yeah, Hollywooding is what it is. And as a medical person, I get really frustrated sometimes watching it. No, they couldn't have did that. You can't put your hand in somebody's chest and massage the heart. Would you stop it? Because what's going to happen, you're going to see the episode, and be like, why didn't you put your hand in my husband's chest? Because I saw it on TV. No, ma'am. We don't do that. You're welcome.
I can't answer for any other community, but Plainfield, gosh, now you're gonna make me. Maybe in 2015 or so, there was a lot going on at the same time with facilities. The fire station that we had downtown here, I think you may have come in a little late. I talked about that building, but that facility needed a lot of work. It actually needed more money put into it. It was built in '94. I think it opened in '94, and it was relatively cheap to build back those days. It needed new bay doors. It needed some HVAC work. It needed a new roof. And it was actually going to be to put more money into that building than we paid for it initially, 20 years earlier. The town had plans for development down here. So that led into that building, tied into those plans. Don't put the money into it because we have plans to do something down here. The police department needed more space, and we needed some renovations in a bigger building on 267. So all that tied in together, and they put together a public safety facilities plan. And they took out a bond. It was about $25 million that included 2 new fire stations for us, renovating the one on 267 at the water tower for the police annex, which is there now, tearing this building down. The 911 center at the time was in the police department. They relocated that to our old headquarters, repurposed all those buildings, spent all that money at no additional cost to the taxpayer, is the way the town did that. For other communities, I can't answer for that, but we are in a much better place facility-wise for growth than we were in 2015. We were running out of space. Calls are increasing. We had, 11 men or women in the fire station on 267, and that building was built to sleep about 4, and we had 11 in there. There was no facilities necessarily for men or women. It wasn't really separated very well. So anyhow, that's how we got to where we were at. But the large thing is spent a ton of money on that with no increase to the taxpayer. So very, very good use of the town's funds and planning, and use TIF's district money and some other stuff for that. Nothing came out of our budget or anything like that. So. We love it. We love it. I wish there was 50 people in here asking questions. I'll let the operations chief handle that one.
So the simple and easy answer is our shift commander, the battalion chief, assigns the people assigned to his shift to theirs. So for the shift they do. However, generally speaking, the same people, right? The same people drive the same fire trucks every day, right? And that generally speaking, the same people work on the same trucks, right? So they're assigned And it's part of it is comfort of our people, right? Is they're assigned to a firehouse and they'll move from firehouse to firehouse to take care of vacations and trainings and other stuff like that. But education and experience is the real answer, right? So the people who want to drive the fire engines, they have to go through a process. They have to get certain certifications, which is education, and they have to go through a process just to be cleared as what we call a backup driver. So when the regular chauffeur is off for the day, now they get a fill in, and now they start getting some experience. And seniority plays into that. The chief talked about the price of our trucks a little bit, right? We want some guys with some life experience, right? We want them to have driving fire truck experience through training, but we want them to have some life experience. So generally speaking, the newest member of the fire department isn't driving the fire truck. So in fact, most of the time, it's our more senior members who aren't in leadership positions who are driving fire trucks, and they're assigned there by the battalion chief. Four. Yeah. Most of our engines are staffed with 3. But our ladder truck is currently staffed with 4. There are 4 assigned, but by the time we allow some people off on vacation time, a couple of guys get hurt, and then now we throw a little bit of COVID in there. It doesn't take long, and we're running out of people pretty fast, right? So this next year, we purchased a squad. So Station 1, the one off 267, that's our busiest firehouse. It's located within our busiest district as well. That firehouse goes to a tremendous amount of runs. And so one of the steps we've taken is we're buying like a little mini rescue that'll have 2 people on it. It'll carry some additional equipment and some water rescue equipment. But it's going to take our ladder truck from 4 to 3. But it's going to slow that engine down, and it's going to slow that ladder truck down even more. The ladder truck costs significantly more than the engine, right? And so if we can keep it in the firehouse a little bit more often and keep it available for more complex emergencies, that's our goal. Any other questions? I think to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. As Kathy is manager at the apartments, and we get to see a fair number of EMS calls out there. And I'm always impressed by how those men and women work with these people who are in crisis. And so I just want to say it's really, really good. Okay, that's it. Next month, the Hendricks County Symphony Brass Quintet will be here. It will be on a Wednesday, September 15th, following the Farmers Market. So that's next month. Thank you for coming.